Hey everyone, you know dams have a wide array of uses, right? Some help to prevent flooding while others provide electricity to entire regions. No two dams are quite the same, but every dam in the world needs constant upkeep and maintenance to ensure its safety. Otherwise, cracks can form and dams could fail, and it could cause mass devastation and destruction. So let's begin today's video as we count down the top 15 most dangerous dams in the world. Number 15. Merowe Dam. Merowe Dam sits on the Nile's fourth cataract in the Sudan, and it's the largest contemporary hydroelectric plant in Africa, with a maximum capacity of 1,250 megawatts. The plans to build the Merowe Dam date all the way back to the mid-1950s, but it wasn't officially inaugurated until almost 60 years later in 2009. A large part of the project was funded by the China Import-Export Bank and the Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. So while it certainly took a long time to get the ball rolling for this major power source, enthusiastic investors were finally found to get the job done. Construction of the Merowe Dam took about 6 years to complete, and you can find it 350 kilometers north of the Sudanese capital of Khartoum. The dam itself spans almost 9.5 kilometers, making it the second largest dam along the Nile, and it plays an incredibly important role in the environment as well. This dam not only provided electricity, but also irrigation to create new farmlands, protect against floods, and reduce any potential and problematic sedimentation to its neighboring dam. Construction of the dam alone cost over $6 million, with another $6.8 million spent on the additional power station. But building something this large and this expensive certainly comes at a price. The dam has been cited as being a massive human rights violation over the years, with over 60,000 locals having been displaced after their homes were destroyed by rising water levels. Many of those affected have claimed that they were given no warning of the rising water and no sympathy or compensation from the government for their displacement and homelessness. Number 14. Guajataca Dam. The Guajataca Dam is an earthen dam currently used for irrigation and potable water purposes. A hydroelectric power station was built but no longer in use. The reservoir has a normal surface area of 1.6 square miles. It's 2.5 miles long and its maximum width is about a mile. It's also got a maximum discharge of about 28,000 cubic feet per second. It's also got a drainage basin of about 31 square miles. Alright, that may be a lot of information, but it's important because this dam has proved to be a giant danger for the locals. Construction began in 1928, but the dam would fail almost 100 years later. So what happened? Well, on September 22, 2017, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico hard. The dam operators announced that the spillway was failing at the northern end of the lake, and it could result in the entire dam collapsing. All 70,000 residents in the flood-prone area needed to be evacuated immediately, as living here was now a life-threatening situation, as the dam was getting ready to release about 11 billion gallons of water. Repairs to the dam began in November of that same year, but thousands of local residents, many of which are farmers who depended on the waters of the reservoir, were forced to ration water, which would prove to be detrimental to their way of life. Number 13. Banqiao Dam. Built in 1950 in the Henan province in China, the Banqiao Dam stood at 387 feet high and could hold up to 17 billion cubic feet of water. It was designed to hold back the 1,000-year flood, which occurs every millennium in the area. But in 1975, Typhoon Nina devastated that area, producing floods that were twice the level of what the dam was built to withstand. The rain lasted for 3 days, with about 40 inches of rain each day, surpassing the total annual amount of precipitation Henan typically gets. Naturally, the Banqiao Dam gave way under that amount of water, and this water rushed forward, traveling at 30 miles an hour and reaching heights of 33 feet and a whopping 7 miles wide. The downstream town of Dawencheng was quickly devastated, and close to 10,000 residents were killed in the flood. This event predated early warning systems, and there was no evacuation plan in place for the area beforehand. In total, 26,000 people died from the flood, and another 145,000 died from complications from the contaminated water. Number 12. Oroville Dam. Oroville Dam is an earth-filled embankment dam on the Feather River east of the city of Oroville in California. At 770 feet high, it is the tallest dam in the United States and serves mainly for water supply, hydroelectricity generation, and flood control. The dam impounds Lake Oroville, the second largest reservoir in California, capable of storing more than 3.5 million acre-feet. The dam opened only 54 years ago, but it's already run into some hot water, no pun intended. Aside from people dying during the dam's construction, the structure was affected by incredibly heavy rainfall and flooding in 2017, resulting in damage to the main and emergency spillways. This prompted the immediate evacuation of more than 180,000 people living downstream along the Feather River and the relocation of a fish hatchery. Needless to say, this was pretty bad. About 150,000 cubic yards of erosion debris clogged the channel of the Feather River below the dam, preventing the release of water from the hydroelectric plant, thus reducing the overall capacity of the dam to release water. The dam has since been repaired and the debris was cleaned, and an investigation ensued, all of which cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars. And while the sum of money was a large one, you really can't put a cost on the human lives that could have been swept away so quickly during a flood. The Oroville Dam, that's incredibly important for the state of California, but living so close is incredibly dangerous. Number 11. The Guri Dam. Also known as the Simon Bolivar Hydroelectric Power Station, the Guri Dam in Venezuela has a power capacity of 10.2 gigawatts and sits 100 kilometers upstream in the Tucuruí River. It's become one of the biggest power plants in the world and provides approximately 50,000 gigawatts of energy to the country each year. The Guri Dam measures in at 162 meters in height and over 1,300 meters in length, and it's privately owned by the CVG Electrification del Tucuruí. This dam was commissioned after the government adopted a policy in the 1960s to reduce the amount of energy produced from fossil fuels, and construction began in 1963 after a total of 6 companies were awarded the contract. It was truly a joint effort. And by 1964, the Tucuruí River was diverted to enable its construction. But it wasn't until 1976 that the civil works of the first stage were completed. So needless to say, it was quite a bureaucratic process. However, by 2010, Venezuela became over-dependent on the Guri Dam when water levels fell drastically, which led to a severe power crisis in the country. Water levels fell again, though, in 2016, and a serious major blackout ensued. Number 10. Morning Glory Spillway. What's the story, Morning Glory? Well, Lake Berryessa in California is home to the Morning Glory Spillway, a sinkhole that at first glance looks like the doorway to some eldritch realm. But don't be too frightened, because it's really just one massive hole, constantly pulling in water almost like an infinity pool. And while this is actually a man-made spillway, it acts very much as a sinkhole would. The Morning Glory Spillway is fed by the Monticello Dam, and whenever the water level rises above 440 feet, then away it goes, down the hole and into the Putah Creek hundreds of feet below. It is an amazing sight, and it's no wonder people come from all over to check out this one-of-a-kind sinkhole. And because the conditions need to be just right for the water to flow, which is why the Morning Glory Spillway can only be seen in its, well, glory a few times a year. The spillway is a classic example of humans imitating Mother Nature, but as we all know, Mother Nature can be quite dangerous. And aside from the environmental impacts of the spillway, like sandbar erosion and the destruction of local flora and fauna, one man died here in 1997 after being caught in the current while swimming, and he was sucked down into the pipe. So swimming here is strictly prohibited. Number 9. Sayano-Shushenskaya Dam. Another entry on our list that sadly could have been predicted and prevented is the Sayano-Shushenskaya hydro power plant disaster. One morning in 2009, despite some minor maintenance issues, everything at the Russian power plant was running smoothly. But at 8:13 in the morning, everything changed. A catastrophic incident caused major flooding of the engine and turbine rooms, and 2 hydroelectric generators to explode underwater. All power ceased to generate afterwards, resulting in blackouts in the neighboring residential areas. To make matters worse, the accident caused an oil spill, and at least 40 tons of transformer oil was released downstream. The official accident report states that vibrations by the turbines caused them to literally come apart, and the turbines jumped out of their protective casing, destroying the machinery. The building immediately flooded, killing 75 people inside. Number 8. The Kariba Dam. On the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe and across from the Zambezi River is the Kariba Gorge. On November 6, 1956, construction of the Kariba Dam began and wrapped up in 1959. Today, the concrete arch of the Kariba Dam is 128 meters high with a crest of 579 meters in length, and it has a volume of over 1 million cubic meters. In total, it generates 1.6 gigawatts of hydroelectric power and over 6 trillion kilowatt hours of electricity per year. Since the Kariba Dam sits between Zambia and Zimbabwe, both countries are able to reap the benefits of the energy created there. And while the Kariba Dam is truly a sight to behold, its construction did garner a bit of unwanted attention. Because the project was so massive and so ambitious, it displaced about 30,000 members of the indigenous population. Almost like riverside gentrification, but without the Starbucks. Another project ensued called Operation Noah, which was aptly named because it required the evacuation of thousands of animals who called the habitat their home. But as the decades went on, the dam gained acceptance because of the incredibly inexpensive electricity that it provides to Zambia's copper industry. But all of this came at a steep price. The building of the Kariba Dam forced out nearly 60,000 indigenous people and made all of them refugees in the process. Then there's the environmental impact of the dam, which changed the area's downstream ecology and put the lives of the local wildlife at risk because of rising waters. Number 7. The Hoover Dam. Probably the most well-known dam amongst Americans, the Hoover Dam in Colorado was built between the years 1930 and 1936, and it's named after Herbert Hoover, who was the president at the time. Formerly called the Boulder Dam, the Hoover Dam is found in Black Canyon along the Colorado River at the Arizona-Nevada border. It's now the highest concrete arch dam in the United States. It created Lake Mead, one of the largest artificial lakes in the world, which extends for a whopping 185 kilometers upstream. And while the Hoover Dam may be kind of old, it still has an important purpose today. It's used for flood and silt control, affordable hydroelectric power, agriculture irrigation, and supplies water to nearby areas. The Hoover Dam is also a major tourist attraction that sees about 7 million visitors a year. The dam's about 221 meters high and 379 meters long at its crest, and it holds well over 3 million cubic meters of concrete and generates about 2.1 gigawatts of power. It takes 4 reinforced concrete intake towers above the dam to divert the waters of Lake Mead from the reservoir into massive steel pipes, which feed the water into the hydroelectric power plant below. Nearly half of all the generated electric power goes to Southern California and the rest to Nevada and Arizona, keeping it local. But thanks to the Hoover Dam, the Colorado River is no longer naturally flooded, which threatens not only the very existence of the body of water, but everything that lives in it as well, and the river has been drying up ever since. Number 6. Mosul Dam. Standing 371 feet tall and 2.1 miles long and holding about 2.7 cubic miles worth of water and providing electricity to the 1.7 million residents of Mosul, the Mosul Dam is the largest of its kind in Iraq. But it also comes with a great deal of risk. The dam is located on top of gypsum, which dissolves when it comes into contact with water. And dams, well, hold a lot of water. Continuous maintenance is required to grout all of the new leaks that form with a liquefied slurry of cement and other additives. And since its completion in 1986, more than 50,000 tons of material have been injected into the dam. 24 machines currently continuously pump grout into the dam base, and this will likely be the dam's permanent story. But between 1992 and 1998, 4 sinkholes formed downstream of the dam, and a 5th sinkhole developed east of the dam in February of 2003 that was filled several times. And in August 2005, another sinkhole developed to the east. Just another tough part of the story, I guess. But the Iraq government has also suggested a $4 billion 5-year project to build a 220-foot deep wall around the dam's foundation that would provide a more long-term solution. Number 5. Tucuruí Dam. The Tucuruí Dam in Brazil has the distinct honor of being the first large-scale hydroelectric project to be built in the Amazon forest. Hey, congrats. But it was definitely a long road because the construction began in 1975 and wasn't officially complete until 2012. 40 years in the making may have been worth it because the Tucuruí Dam generates 8.4 gigawatts of power for 13 million people. Today, it is the country's biggest hydroelectric plant that's owned and operated completely by Brazil instead of a private corporation. This hydropower complex is situated on the lower Tocantins River in Tucuruí, Para, Brazil, and took 2 phases to build. It's been producing energy ever since 1984, and this entire project cost about $5.5 billion to build, which included the 78-meter-tall and 12,000-meter-long concrete gravity dam. The second phase of construction added 11 generating units, which allowed the dam's capacity to almost double. The dam became so popular in the 1970s that it was even featured as the backdrop of a Hollywood film. Number 4. The Addicks Dam. The Addicks Reservoir and Addicks Dam in conjunction with the Barker Reservoir prevent downstream flooding of Buffalo Bayou in Houston, Texas. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers completed the construction of the Addicks Dam and the outlet facility in 1948, with the reservoir formed by a rolled earthen dam nearly 62,000 feet long above the stream bed, with the top of the dam reaching about 120 feet high. But over the years, cracks have formed in the dam, which many have been left to their own devices, which is why in 2009 the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers deemed it extremely high risk and critically near failure. Needless to say, that's not good, so when Hurricane Harvey hit the area in 2017, there was a huge problem. While the dam didn't collapse, the water level was raised well above what the dam could handle, and the water needed to be released by engineers before any further damage was done to the dam. But this came at an incredibly high cost. Water was released at the rate of 6 million gallons per minute, which caused more than 4,000 upstream and downstream homes and businesses, many of which had remained dry during the storm, to be inundated, with some being completely submerged. Number 3. The Grand Coulee Dam. The Grand Coulee Dam is pretty easy to find. It sits on the Columbia River in Washington state. Originally a project of the Federal Bureau of Reclamation, the main structure and power plant was completed all the way back in 1941, but it wasn't until 1942 that it was fully operational. The dam rises 168 meters above the river's bedrock and is measured at 1,179 meters along the crest, and it has been restricted into more of an L shape, which now measures 1,592 meters. All in all, there are well over 9,000 cubic meters of concrete in the entire structure, and it's got a power capacity of about 6.8 gigawatts. The Grand Coulee Dam also creates the reservoir at the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Lake, which has a storage capacity of almost 12 billion cubic meters, and the largest part of the dam sits on the Columbia River. The dam itself also provided irrigation to the Columbia Basin projects below, assists in flood control, simplifies navigation, and of course furnishes hydroelectric power. The dam was also able to rise to the occasion and prove its worth when it was a major source of electricity for the U.S. during the Second World War, and today it's one of the 7 civil engineering wonders of the world. But despite being one of those wonders, the creation of the Grand Coulee Dam was quite consequential for the local indigenous tribes who called the region home for generations. The construction of the dam ravaged the wildlife the Spokane tribe was so dependent on and connected to. Number 2. The Three Gorges Dam. Another civil engineering wonder of the world, the Three Gorges Dam in China is the largest hydroelectric dam in the world, with a capacity of a whopping 22.5 gigawatts, totally eclipsing the other entries on this list. Another dam sitting on the Yangtze River, the Three Gorges Dam took 40,000 workers to construct over the course of just 12 years, and the construction in its entirety cost between $28 and $88 billion. Yeah, that's a big gap, but the Chinese government likes to be a bit hush-hush on the subject. It's also the largest concrete structure on Earth, and the idea behind it was born all the way back in the year 1919. But it took about 80 years for the commission to pass by the National People's Congress as a monument to Chinese engineering. It is a massive source of renewable energy and replaces the burning of 30 million tons of coal each year, and used enough steel to build 63 Eiffel Towers. It gives energy to over 60 million people every year, but something that massive has to garner some controversy. The construction of the Three Gorges displaced 1.3 million people and destroyed historical excavation areas, and 100 workers died while building it. But the biggest impact of the dam is still on the environment, as nearby fish populations are in decline and pollution is increasing as the river is no longer able to clean itself as it's choked off by the dam. It should come as no surprise then that something so big must also come at such a large price. Number 1. Sayano-Shushenskaya. The Sayano-Shushenskaya Dam is located on the Yenisei River in Caucasia, Russia. It's the 9th largest hydroelectric plant in the world in terms of average power generation and is the largest power plant in all of Russia. The plant is operated by the appropriately named company Rush Hydro, and the dam provides them with more than a quarter of their generation capacity of 6.4 gigawatts. Construction of the Sayano-Shushenskaya Dam began back in 1963, and it took until 1978 to finish. It's 242 meters tall and over 1,000 meters long, and 70% of the power generated within it is delivered to 4 major aluminum smelters in Siberia. However, in 2009, the dam was temporarily shut down following an accident that caused severe damage to the turbines. Luckily, though, Rush Hydro was able to reopen the dam just 1 year later, having fixed most of the issues. If you visit the dam, try not to fall into the water below because it generates about 30 million tons of pressure down there, even if 60% of it is neutralized by the dam's own weight. The Sayano-Shushenskaya Dam, though, was built to safely withstand earthquakes of up to 8 on the Richter scale and entered the Guinness Book of World Records for the strongest construction of its type. You may not want to be there for that 8.0 earthquake after all. I'll see you next time.
Watch our binge-watching playlist if you'd like to watch all of our most popular top 15 videos. Grab a drink, grab a snack, and get ready to binge.